Welcome to the Augmented City, one of many futures in which AI and augmented reality have transformed how we see cities and ourselves. The story you're about to hear is one exploring what's the worst or the best that can happen, and how we might stop it or help bring it to fruition. After listening to each story, ask yourself, is this the city and the future that we want?
The Cloisters. People often wondered what the future might look like, or so George was told. They wondered how it might taste or smell, what foods would remain viable, whether the air would be clean, if the sky would glow orange with wildfires every day of the year. They did not think of how it would sound, or the price of quiet. They didn't think of the hundreds of sounds they were exposed to every day, from the wheeze of air purifiers to the hum of electricity to doors chiming open and alerts pinging up. They didn't miss the birds they've never heard sing or the insects they'd never heard buzz. They didn't know that silence was once the indication of a major threat, that nature only went quiet before the storm broke or the predator lunged. George remembered this every time he came to work in the Cloisters. The residents of the Cloisters had taken a vow of silence. It wasn't religious. Anyone of any faith could come and live here, assuming their jacket files checked out and their money was good, and they survived the probationary period otherwise known as extended escrow. Instead, residents committed, in writing, to as analog a life as possible. Physical media, 0 layers, regular in-person gatherings, music that came from instruments even. And this was where things got truly transgressive: cash money. For some, this was an affectation, an aesthetic choice, like organic food. For others, it was a cognitive affordance. An old-fashioned way of life meant less distraction, and less distraction meant deeper relationships, greater productivity, and less cortisol-fueled inflammatory disease. Or so said the common wisdom. George hadn't looked at the stats. He didn't need to. He knew the calm that descended as soon as he flicked off his filters and started checking the moisture meters scattered through the cloister gardens. "Who are you talking to?" asked a young woman's voice behind him. George whirled. Stupidly, he tapped out an apology gesture between his thumb and forefinger. Then he remembered that nothing would change for the Cloistered visually. They couldn't see a change in halo or aura or menu. She couldn't see he was sorry. She couldn't see he was staff. "I apologize," he said, rustily. "I didn't know anyone would be here." "I woke up early. New birds." He blinked. Again, nothing popped up for him. She remained a stranger. It was like a fairy tale. You find a princess alone in a garden and she talks to birds. "There are?" She nodded and brought out a book, a real book, hard and square with slippery pages that gleamed and slid against each other like silk, of birds. She held the page with one thumb. The book looked absurdly large in her hands. It was impossible to tell the age of anyone in the Cloisters. They were so stress-free that a multiple divorcee might look like a grad student, and the lack of information meant the population couldn't be screened and sorted like normal. "Grackles, I think." "Oh," he said. "Okay." She looked sad. He was sad. He wanted to share this but had no idea how. "Are you from out there?" she asked. He nodded. She nodded with him. "I can't go out there." He winced. He thought of the prayer hands his aura would be throwing up if he could. His emoting suite always presented a golden retriever begging for a bone, so to speak. "Not allowed?" "Oh, I could," she said, blushing slightly, and George actually felt the sun shine brighter, as though he'd taken off his glasses just now and not in the Cloister's vestibule. "But it's not safe." George frowned. "Crime is down, actually. I have epilepsy." She held up one wrist. A bracelet glittered there with a series of symbols that George would have recognized better if they were glowing and animated. "I'm supposed to tell people, in case." "In case of what?" "A seizure." In the real world, she'd be showing him a menu of symptoms, looping infogifs on her devices, porting over a press kit for her ailment. "How will I know?" he asked, and felt very stupid. She had to know that people outside the Cloisters had no memory to speak of. Being able to call up whatever, they didn't need it. Even names came up to you if you had the right plugins. All George ever did was start saying one, and the finishers did their thing and pulled up the menu for him. But Cloistered people remembered everything. Names, dates, even what things smelled and tasted like, who was sick, how to help them. What if he forgot? What if he forgot this face, forgot she might need help? I freeze up, she said. It's very quiet, actually, but I might not answer you if you call out. What's your name? He asked. Write it on me, he thought. Burn it there, so I remember. Smiling, she flipped to another page in the book. Robin.
I'm Greg Lindsay, and you've been listening to The Augmented City, a new report by the Urban Tech Hub at Cornell Tech's Jacobs Institute on the threats and opportunities of AI and augmented reality at urban scale. The report was written by me, Greg Lindsay, with stories by Madeline Ashby and illustrations by Rausch. Click the link in the show notes to download the report and more stories like this one.